Yes or no? Yes or no? Well, I guess.
எனக்கு என்னமோ நீங்க ஏதோ பெரிய தப்பு பண்றீங்கன்னு தோணுது.
தப்பு பண்றேன்.
Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and Jagam Tandiram is a brand new Tamil language gangster action thriller. Initially it was already scheduled for a theatrical release in May 2020, but because of COVID-19 it got delayed and can now be streamed on Netflix. It is the newest film by writer and director Kartik Subbaraj, who is considered as one of the freshest new faces of Tamil cinema. We have already reviewed 3 of his films in the past. His 2012 debut Pizza, as well as the 2 gangster comedies Jigartanda and Petta. And his newest one, Jagam Tandiram, is also very much at home in the gangster genre. It's brutal, stylish, its characters are ruthless and definitely not your typical heroes. It has a certain wing to it, and there's certainly a kinship to filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino or Guy Ritchie. The latter even more so this time, because almost the entire film takes place in London. And with James Cosmo we get a very prominent English language actor as well. The star though is of course Dhanush, who I just recently absolutely loved in Marty Selvaraj's second film Karnan. He plays the clever gangster Suroli, who gets paid a lot of money, or who lets himself get paid a lot of money, to leave his home in Tamil Nadu to come to London and help the powerful, brutal and extremely xenophobic racist gangster boss Peter, played by James Cosmo, to get rid of his competitor Shivados, played by Jojo George in his Tamil debut. The introductions to all 3 characters are great, and it's a classic gangster story. The presentation is pretty good and the movie begins entertaining. The music was composed by Santosh Narayanan and there are definitely some nice songs. The cinematography was done by Shreyas Krishna, the editing by Vivek Harshan, and the production value overall is quite impressive. The first half of the film is a lot of fun with a lot of that gangster humor that you know and love from movies like this. And Dhanush is quite exhilarating as this very brutal gangster who basically has no moral compass at all, but who also has a sweeter or at least playful side to him as well. From what I have read, director Kartik Subbaraj has told Dhanush not to shy away from incorporating some of superstar Rajnikant's mannerism into his performance. Subbaraj is a huge Rajnikant fan, and his latest film Petta, which also starred Rajnikant, was very much a love letter to the actor and his legacy. The title Jagam Tandiram, which translates to "The universe is a ruse," also refers to a line from the song Sambo Siva Sambo from the 1979 film Ninaital Inikum, which also featured Rajnikant. And similar to Petta, Jagam Tandiram presents us with a protagonist who is actually very shady. So much so that I was thinking at one point that we are maybe watching the villain all this time. He's definitely not as evil as James Cosmo's Peter, but he has no regard for human life either. But where Petta had this very heightened style and tone throughout the entire film, Jagam Tandiram goes a different route. And unfortunately, that's where it completely falls apart for me. When I said that this is a classic cool gangster movie, I actually meant that it's only that in the first half. Now, with the film being just out now, I of course don't want to spoil anything for you, so I will be very careful what to say. With 2 hours and 40 minutes, it is a very long film, and like so often, it can very much be divided into 2 distinct halves. The first one I enjoyed quite a bit. I mean, it's not the most realistic or logical story and you certainly have to suspend your disbelief, but because of its dark humor tone, you can go with it. And I have to say that the story really caught me off guard at the midway point because I expected it to go rather differently and I was very curious to see what they would do in the second half. Now, it is clear from the beginning that there's more to the film than just wanting to be a cool gangster movie. It actually starts with a refugee boat at the UK border, and the first time we are being introduced to Peter, he is driving around in his car that happens to have a license plate that says White Power. So the overall subject matter is established early on, and I think it's quite commendable that the movie wants to tell a story that's very timely and relevant, and that it directly puts its finger on the ugly truth of widespread racism in our modern world. Jagam Tandiram isn't just set in London to present some fancy locations or tell a stylish gangster story, it actually openly addresses the incapability of rich Western countries to take responsibility for the wars they have initiated in many countries all over the world. but with the tone the movie establishes in the first half, and especially how it paints the character of Suroli, for me it takes such a sharp turn at the midway point and it simply isn't able to bring the different tones together. It wants to tell this important story about refugees, about finding a new home, about racism and about redemption. But it is all very heavy-handed. There is this super serious, sad flashback and how Aishwarya Lakshmi's character Attila was integrated in the story and how her character behaved didn't work for me at all. Now, this isn't a big spoiler or anything, but my biggest gripe with the movie is that I simply don't accept the character of Suroli from a certain point on anymore. The things he is doing in the first half makes him completely unredeemable in my eyes. He's a grown man that knew all along what he has gotten himself into, and his character development felt super shallow and out of place. If the movie would have remained true to the tone of the first half, I would have been fine with this type of anti-hero. But when it gets so serious and also so melodramatic later on, it completely lost me. Unfortunately, a lot of the background music also tends to be super heavy and on the nose. And on top of that, there are also quite a few situations where I was wondering why the characters were behaving the way they did. As far as the action goes, I liked most of the hand-to-hand combat, but there are also a few instances involving firearms where it's one of those movies that let our hero just walk out straight to the bad guys, even if he would be dead in a heartbeat. In those moments it is more interested in celebrating the power of the star as well as the power of good versus evil, but especially in the finale it became rather lackluster for me. But at that point I was unfortunately pretty checked out anyway. The overall message and theme of the movie is a good one, but in my opinion it just doesn't come together with the way the movie and the protagonist are established in the first half. So in German I'd say, Jagam Thandiram hat vor allem in der ersten Hälfte einiges zu bieten. Es gelingt ihm aber nicht, seine schwierige Hauptfigur, die wichtigen Themen, die er anspricht und die unterschiedlichen Stimmungen mitreißend und befriedigend zusammenzuführen. I give Jagam Thandiram 6 out of 10. It's more like 5.9, but I don't do that.
What the fuck?
Dumb.
What?
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Jagam Thandiram. You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd and also on Patreon simply at TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.